Good afternoon, Bucharest. How are y'all doing this afternoon? Good? You know, I was here several times in the past, and I remember one time in particular, giant stage, it was my birthday, and I got everyone in the room to sing happy birthday to me. I don't know if any of you are here, but consider yourself lucky. Today is not my birthday, so I'm not going to make you do that. Okay? But what I want to share with you today is kind of a personal journey that I've had with culture, because I feel that it's been something that I've been involved with from kind of day one in my career. So I want to show you kind of where I've come from with that, what I've learned, and where I've taken it today. I hope, if I do a good job this afternoon, that I'm going to send you away with a lot of ideas about how you can build and implement a great culture in your own businesses. I deeply, deeply believe that it's a huge key to your success to have a phenomenal culture in your business that attracts great people and keeps great people to help you build something amazing. So let's do it. I heard in the introduction something about me being at Netscape. I hope some of you remember Netscape. I know most of you probably are not old enough. But Netscape is where it all started for me. As far as I'm concerned, that's where the public internet or consumer internet really started, and the first pieces of startup culture. Okay? Ever since the creation of Netscape, there have been people that think that startup culture equals free food. There was free food at Netscape. I thought it was really cool, but it's not the culture at all. Okay, and I'm going to try to explain to you what the culture is, okay, and how you can define culture yourself. So, Netscape. Okay, for those of you that were there, Netscape versus Microsoft, the browser wars, David and Goliath. Netscape was the David, okay? We poked at Microsoft and their business, and they finally said, oh shit, we better do something. And then they wanted to come after us with everything they had. So what was the bottom line culture at Netscape? Beat Microsoft. Okay? Was that a good thing? I don't think so, because what happened was we were always looking over our backs. Okay? What's Microsoft doing? They're coming to get us. Oh shit, right? So Netscape was really, really laser focused on just doing everything they could to beat Microsoft, but not focused on actually how we can develop ourselves and move our own business further. Okay? I think that was a bit of a distraction. I left Netscape and went to work for a much smaller American technology company called Trilogy. You've probably never heard of it. However, it was one of the best recruiting machines that I've ever been a part of. Why? Because they knew exactly who they were, and they knew exactly who they wanted to bring into the company. You see on the magazine article, it's called Insanity Inc. It was total insanity. It was the epitome of what used to be startup culture. Work hard, play harder. Okay? Everything was about how much work can you do, how much work can you achieve, and then when you finally are finished with your work, go out and see how much drink you can get into your system. Okay? Every single Friday night was party on the patio. Right? Party on the patio was drinking with all your colleagues, okay? Was that the culture of the company? No, it was a big part of it. You certainly had to like drinking every Friday night, or else you probably didn't feel part of it. But the culture at this company, at Trilogy, was really about, let's absolutely, positively find the best people that we possibly can, who like to work hard, who like to play hard, and we're going to build a great company around it. So they knew who they were and they knew what they wanted. I stayed at Trilogy until it crashed and burned. That happened in 2001. A lot of things crashed and burned. I got lucky. I got really, really lucky. I got a call one day, not necessarily from one of these three, but I got a call one day and they said, do you want to work for Google? This is in 2003. Who wouldn't say in 2003, yeah, I want to work for Google, right? I got to be the first recruiter for Google in Europe. It was amazing. It was one of the most incredible journeys I've ever been on, okay? But when it comes to culture, these guys cracked it. These guys figured it out. Larry, Sergey, and Eric spent time every single Sunday afternoon at Subway, strange choice, talking about culture and talking about who they wanted to be, who they wanted Google to be, how they wanted Google to operate. Can you imagine that, sitting down with the leadership every single Sunday afternoon for a long time, talking about what you want to be operating like, what you want your culture to be, what you value the most? This started very, very, very early at Google, always talking about this. And that's how they were able to develop and instill an unbelievable culture. Right? And there are things, I haven't been at Google for 13 years. There are things that I still deeply remember in terms of how this business operated and why it's done so well. So let's try to get to a definition of culture that you might be able to relate with, okay? This is somebody who I've actually never met, only I've seen on the internet, okay? But I really, really like how she defined the culture, okay? Something about everyone having a shared understanding about what it means to be successful at our organization, right? That's pretty easy to understand, pretty simple. You can think about it like that. Then there's this guy. I actually know him because he worked at Netscape. Okay, now he's part of Andreessen Horowitz, which I think everybody knows is one of the top venture capital firms in the world. Okay, Ben Horowitz spends a lot of time talking about culture as well. This is a great quote. It talks about culture being how people behave when you're not around, you being the CEO or the leadership team. He's also said at times, culture is how you will feel about the company 10, 20, 30 years later, and what you will remember it being like to work there, what you will remember the people being like, and that feeling that you had, and that it was such a great experience, and how you can go back and it's like me saying, yeah, Google 13 years ago was an incredible journey, and I imagine I'll continue to say that for the next 10 or 20 years. Okay, these are definitions of culture that I hope that you can relate with. Let me share you what is mine, okay? My definition of culture consists of three things, or maybe it's better to call it a framework, okay? Number one is decisions or decision making. How do you make decisions in your company? It tells a lot about who you are, okay? A lot about who you are. How do you make decisions? After decisions comes behavior, right? How do you behave? How do you behave when no one's looking, okay? How you behave speaks louder than words. We've heard the expression, right? Behavior, massively important. Understanding behavior. And finally, maybe the most important piece is communication. Okay? How do you communicate within your organization? How do you get the messages across about what you value, what you believe, who you want to be as an organization, the kind of people that you want to bring in? Are you communicating effectively? Are you communicating frequently enough? Are people getting the message? Okay? So try to think about those three areas as we go through the rest of the talk. So, I built something about 10, 12 years ago, which I'm not necessarily sure is unique, but I call it a culture audit. And this was my way of trying to figure out what's going on inside of companies relating to the culture and the values and basically how the organization behaves. So talking to people in companies to figure out what's going on. And over the past 10, 12 years, I've done this with a number of companies. I've done it with startups, I've done it with large companies, I've done it with tech companies, I've done it with non-tech companies. And the findings or the learnings, I think, have been amazing. Okay? So I want to share some of that with you in the hopes that you might go back and try some of this yourself, because I actually don't think you need someone like me to come and do it. I think you can do it yourself. So, culture audit has 4 main components. The first one is attraction. You need to understand why people are attracted to your company. Okay? Sounds obvious, but maybe it's not, because you will all invent ideas around why people are attracted to your company, but are those the real reasons? Once you know the real reasons, you can double down on those and say, okay, if this is what people are attracted to, let's make sure we get that out there. The second thing is, why do people stay at your company? Hopefully not for the golden handcuffs, okay? But why do you stay here? Why don't you pick up the phone when somebody like me calls? Why don't you start looking for other jobs? Because there's something that's keeping them there. What is it? Make sure you know what it is and do even more of that. Leadership and management. What do you think about the leadership? What do you think about the management, right? How are you treated? Do you feel like you can succeed here? Do you have objectives? One of the craziest things that I hear over and over and over again when I do culture audit, people don't have objectives. How is this possible? How can you be part of a company, especially a fast-growing company, and have no direction in terms of where you're going? I don't get it. So figure it out. Find out if your people know where they're going. And the fourth part and the final part, of course, is all about your culture and your values, or the DNA of your organization, right? What makes it tick? What do people inside your company think the values are? Maybe they're not even written, but I bet you they think they know some. Maybe they are written, and I bet you they don't know them all, or they don't talk about them the way that you want them to. You need to understand all this stuff, okay? You need to understand all this stuff, and then it's going to take you there. So, okay, I do all this stuff. Great. Thanks for sharing, David. But what you need to hear is what I've learned, okay? Because I've gotten to a point now where I think I understand how this works. So, first and foremost, and you'll remember it was my third framework piece on the culture, it's around communication. With only one exception, every company that I've done this with, there are communication problems. The employees say there is not good communication here. The management says our communication is fine. Well, it's not fine because the employees don't think it's fine. And let me explain to you why it's not fine. We are overwhelmed with information. Okay? There is stuff coming at us all day, every day, constantly, and we can't process it all. If you want people to hear your message, you have to repeat it over and over and over and over again until they don't want to hear it anymore. Okay? It needs to become a mantra. If you want people to hear your message, you need to repeat it, you need to use multiple channels, and you need to beat it into people's heads. Okay? Then they're going to get it. Next thing I found out, and I've had a lot of debates with people about this, so some of you might buy it, some of you might not. I think that it's very, very hard to have a dual culture, okay? This group over here is okay eating kebabs. This group over here is okay doing yoga. This is actually from a real example, okay? The company was building a fitness app. Okay? The founders decided to do a fitness app because they'd done A/B testing on 25 different ideas and figured out that fitness app was the way to go. They didn't give a shit about fitness, right? The guy's like, I eat 3 kebabs a week. I could care less. But they started bringing people into the company who did care. And they did want to live the product. They wanted yoga classes. Right? Now you have this dual culture. We just want to build a successful company and make money. We want to do something good for the yoga community. Then what do you do? Right? I don't know. I don't think it works. You might. Now, the worst is politics. And I hope some of you get my little image because I love this show. But politics kills it all. Okay? Politics ruins any cultural effort you will ever try to begin. And what do I mean by that? The CEO, the founders, the leadership team need to be 100% behind the initiative. They need to be backing whoever's working on it. They need to be fully supporting it. They need to be engaged. They need to spend time. And they need to be the ones really shouting the message loud and clear. And if you don't have that, I don't know how you're going to make it work. And I've seen it fail over and over again because of these politics, okay? Try to avoid that. But from time to time it works, and it's beautiful, okay? I worked with one company where when you talk to all of the employees and I ask them all my questions, they say the same thing. It's crazy. No one does that. But from time to time, you get in one of these environments where everybody's aligned. And you know why they're aligned? One, because the guy is repeating himself over and over and over and over again. He's got that mantra. You don't want to hear it any longer, okay? But the other thing is they've spent a lot of time defining who they are. Okay, this particular company, you're also going to think this is crazy, has a 73-page culture book, okay? Over the top. Maybe, but they really know who they are, and they really know how they operate, and they're able to put that in front of you, maybe as a candidate, and say, this is who we are. You decide if you like it. Okay? You decide if you want to work in this type of an environment, because it's actually not an easy environment. It's really tough, but some people really thrive. See if you want to do it. That's great. That's great, because you want to be able to share that kind of information with people and say, this is who we are, this is how we operate. Do you want to do that too? Come with us. Okay? So, now I'm thrilled that I can share with you the first example that I ever have of actually doing this inside a company, and I feel like it's working, okay? So I joined a small company almost 2 years ago, and one of the reasons I joined was because the CEO and the founder was really excited about building a very strong culture and wanted me to help with that. So that was very, very attractive to me. And I said, yes, I want to do it, okay? This is what they had in the beginning. A napkin with some words written on it, thinking about the values. That's great. You've got to start somewhere, right? You've got to start somewhere. And the most important thing is to start talking about it, okay? Start talking about it. So I came in. I did my culture audit. That's what I know how to do. That's what I created. I talked to everybody in the company. By the way, you don't have to talk to everybody in the company. Once you talk to about 12 or 15 people, no matter the size of the company, if you have a good representation, you're going to get a very clear idea of what's going on. I talked to the whole company because my company's small and it's my company, right? So you do the audit, you analyze the audit. Okay? And you will, if you do this, get tons of very, very interesting information that you didn't know about, that you didn't realize people felt this way or thought this way. Okay? You will be able to come up with a list of short, medium, and long-term objectives or actions that you can take to improve the culture and build upon the culture. You will ask questions that I've highlighted here that I think will get you very, very interesting responses around what do you think the values are? If you don't ask, you don't know. And more importantly than that, when you talk about this company to your friends and family, how do you describe it? What words do you use? Because that's the real feeling these people have about your company. Because when you share with your friends and you share with your family, you don't hide things, right? You say, this is what our company's all about. This is what it's like. And so you end up with things like this, okay? A list of words, a word cloud, a bubble cloud, whatever you want to call it. But it's something very, very visual that you can then see, these are the most important things to our people. This is what they feel. This is what they operate like, okay? So we need to think about that and figure out how to incorporate this into our culture and our values as we continue to build, okay? I also want you to inspire them, right? A lot of people can talk about values. You can always have values on your website, on a poster, or whatever, but you need to get them to understand that values can be incredibly powerful, right? And that they can spark emotion in people and get them rallied behind something, some kind of an idea that influences massively how they make decisions, how they behave, and how they communicate, okay? So my source of inspiration, or one of them that I shared with the team today, are these values that come from a startup that I've worked with previously. It's a robotics startup in Poland, okay? And I think their values are phenomenal. I don't know if they're real, if that's what goes on in the company, but right away when I read that, I say, I get it. I get it. I know what you're trying to say. I think I know who you are. And by the way, I think it's so cool and so powerful that I asked for the T-shirt, right? I mean, how many people will wear a T-shirt with their company's value or values on it? Not many, right? Because most are boring and corny and don't mean anything. This means something. I don't even work there, and it means something to me, right? So this is what you want. You want to get to that point. So how do you get to that point? Start with the values exercise. You put 80 words on a piece of paper, and you say to your people, pick 5. Tell me the ones that are most important to you. If you don't see it on the paper, write your own word. Figure out what people are thinking, what they think the values are. Then discuss, 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 discuss. Okay? You need to spend a lot of time. At KeySearch, we spent 3 months talking about the first idea that we had for a value, which is trust. Okay? Every single week, we had an hour session on culture. We spent the first 3 months talking about trust. And what does that mean? Okay? So let me quickly tell you how that discussion can go so you can get everything you need to build these values. Okay? So I think if you choose trust or you choose something as the core value that you want to discuss, what you have to first get into are, well, what are the behaviors that support this value of trust? You just can't say, we believe in trust, or we trust each other, or we trust you, you trust us. I don't know what, but what are the behaviors that support it, right? You have to iron out the behaviors and say, okay, if we behave like this and we believe that we do, or we believe that we should, then that's going to support trust. After you get to the behaviors, you want to talk about examples, right? Can we share real examples about how we are doing trust in our company? You know, can we show this to the outside world? Because if we can't think of examples, then are we really doing it? And only once you've got the behaviors and the examples identified can you then figure out how to define it, okay? And it's the definition that actually really, really matters. Okay, because getting people to remember your values, the behaviors, the examples, all is really hard, right? I mean, people aren't going to remember all this stuff. So you want them to take the definition that you come up together by going through all this exercise, and so that they really believe, yes, that's exactly how we want to represent it. This is exactly what we believe in. Then it becomes powerful. Then it becomes emotional. And then I want you to take it one step further. Okay? And this is the hardest step, and I'll be 100% honest with you, I don't think we're there yet. Metrics. Okay? How can you measure the values? Okay? It's hard. It's really hard to figure out. But if you're not measuring them, how do you know you're living them? How do you know that it's working? So do whatever you can to figure out something that will allow you to measure it. And this is a work in progress for us, right? And it would be for you too. It's never going to end. You're always going to be talking about this, okay? But if you can get there, you're going to have something hugely powerful. We did, right? We feel great about what we've designed because we believe it, because we feel like we're living it. We just had a 2-day offsite here in Bucharest, and you could hear it in the discussions. You could hear people really talking about these values and how they integrate it into their day-to-day work. It's working. I know it's working. We still need to keep going. We still need to evolve, but it happens. And finally, if you don't believe anything that I've said, well, let the numbers be the proof, okay? It's scientifically proven that great places to work outperform the market by a factor of 3x, okay? There are several of these studies. Look them up. They're for real. So culture is real. If you invest the time and the energy and the resources, you can come up with something amazing and build a great company. Thank you very much. I don't know if I'm supposed to take questions. Maybe not.
Thank you so much. It was a bit unexpected. Thank you so much. Let's see if there are any questions. Yes, 1, 2, 3. OK, culture is a problem. or at least a point of interest. So, first one.
Thank you very much. It was very insightful, and I find a lot of inspiration in your enthusiasm. how would you advise talking to leaders of companies who think two things? Number one, digital transformation is about getting that fancy new toy and not about culture, despite more than a decade of evidence pointing to the central role that culture and people play in digital transformation. And two, transformation needs to happen fast. I heard you reference the 3 months that it took to just discuss trust as a concept. And I think I remember that when you were being introduced, it was mentioned that it took 7 years to drive a culture building initiative. So how would you talk to those leaders who just don't seem aware of these key truths?
It's a long answer, but to keep it short, I think it's all about examples and proof, right? Going back to Google, when I was there, one of the most important things in the organization was data. No decisions would be taken if you didn't have the data. And if you didn't learn that very fast, you would get nowhere within the organization. But I think that data and examples speak many, many, many words. And a lot of people come to me and ask me similar questions. We don't have the leadership team or the CEO or the founders behind us in terms of the cultural changes that we want to make. What can you do? Well, sometimes I say there's nothing you can do, you're screwed, and go find another job. But if you're really interested in trying to make something, then your hope is to create kind of like a microculture in your own small part of the organization and work on building something there that you can then take to the leadership and say, look, we've actually been doing something for the last month, 3 months, 6 months, whatever your time frame is, and we're seeing significant changes in the way that we operate and the way that we're successful. And I think that this might be applicable to the rest of the company, right? But no matter what, it takes time because you have to discuss. Because if you don't discuss and you don't spend the time, then people don't internalize it. Right? And people aren't aligned, and they think whatever your value is or whatever your culture is, everybody has a different idea of what it is, right? But when you have those people going the same way, it's powerful and magical.
Love your talk, and I wanted to ask about remote companies. So I've met some remote leaders. Let's call them OGs. So like they were remote before COVID, before all of this. They are some of the best or like most focused people on people and culture. But doing or building culture in remote or in hybrid is super hard. And I'm just curious, what sort of, maybe would you measure anything differently, A? B, what sort of norms, habits would you suggest people focus on in fully remote companies? Because communication is so hard in remote.
Absolutely, it's a great question. Thankfully I've been able to work with some of those companies, and our company is full remote. So there are definite things that you can do. One, I'm going to repeat myself, but you need to be messaging and repeating that message over and over and over again through multiple different channels so that people get it. Second, you need to encourage these types of discussions, right? So while we were in the intensive culture building phase, we met weekly. And talked about it. Now that we're in a less intensive phase of the project, we meet monthly, but it's still very present, and that's one of the things, right? If you want to live it, it has to feel very, very present. I said we just had an offsite. Most companies that are full remote or partially remote or whatever have multiple in-person meetups per year. There has to be a culture aspect during those offsites, right? Whether it's actually a workshop where you're physically working on the culture or something that's just sentimental or feeling that that culture is involved, right? And it's getting people to talk about it. It's getting people to recognize it. On our Slack, we have a channel for each value, right? So anytime somebody does something that's related to that value, it gets dumped into that channel. People are recognized very often for culture. One of our things is a lot about feedback, giving and receiving feedback, and it's a priority, and so we push it. And the leadership or the people who want to promote that are actively engaged in pushing that so that people just see it over and over and over again.
Thank you. I think we have time for one last question. We have here a lady in yellow.
Thank you. Great talk. You mentioned the analysis part and the design part, but you only mentioned communication when it comes to deployment. And I was curious if there are other tactics that we should be using in companies to make sure that culture is part of the DNA of the system of the organization.
In terms of communication?
Not only in terms of communication, in terms of processes or anything else.
So there's so many ways, right? So from an HR perspective, right? Whenever I do these kind of culture projects, it's first understand the culture, right? So and once you understand it, then you say, okay, well, how can I put these into all the processes, right? But then you can go into like many different things, right? So I'm in recruitment, so I'll talk about recruitment, right? So how do you bake that culture and values into your recruitment process, right? Is there somebody on an interview team that is specifically charged with evaluating culture fit? Right? Or is there a 4-person interview process and each one of those people takes a specific part, right? At Google, I don't know if it still works this way, but there were 4 parts, right? And I still remember them. It was general cognitive ability, experience, leadership, and googliness, which was culture, okay? And everybody had to make sure that they were looking at that throughout the interviews. Then you bring people into the company. Then it's in the onboarding, right? I'm doing a talk later this week on onboarding, okay? Onboarding is, the culture piece is hugely important because that's one very significant opportunity that you have to indoctrinate people into your culture. So how are you utilizing that onboarding process? But yeah, in general, you want to deploy that culture throughout all of your processes so that it's felt throughout your business in everything that you do. And just to finish off, if anybody has more questions, one, I'm happy to take them individually, and second, tomorrow afternoon I have a Q&A session, so feel free to join. Thanks very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much.